Let me start off by, good morning, but let me start off by just saying the weather's going to cooperate and should melt the snow, but if you're out there trying to shovel, maybe it's getting late to say it, but just be careful. This snow is very wet now and very heavy, and if you're not in great shape, we don't need any problems. But it would be nice to make sure that at your street corner or in front of your house there's a ways through the slush, and don't take your snow and throw it into the streets. People do that so the cars will go over it, but it just leaves it a problem for the sanitation department that incidentally did seem to do a good job. So I wanted to thank all of the men and women of the sanitation department for their work this weekend, and particularly those who then went out to Suffolk County, where we sent a lot of men, women, and equipment to help them. They got a lot worse snowstorm than we did, and we're glad that we can help. Let's get to the subject du jour, if you will, or d'oeil, and it is that since 2001, the life expectancy of New Yorkers increased by 3 years. Our administration, we think, has helped make that possible by taking bold health measures on everything from smoking to obesity and diabetes to heart disease. However, as far as we have come, we think there's still a lot more we can do to improve public health, and that includes helping New Yorkers avoid the serious health problems that come from consuming too much salt. Now, reducing the amount of salt in our diets isn't as simple as keeping our hands off the salt shaker, and that's because 80% of the salt we eat comes not from your salt shaker, but from packaged and restaurant foods. Many of these foods don't even taste salty, including the biggest contributor to our salt consumption, bread and rolls. And that's one of the reasons why 90% of Americans have too much salt in their diet, and why on average we in fact consume twice as much as is recommended for most people, even without realizing it. And that's why, to really make a dent in salt consumption, we need help from food manufacturers and retailers. Now, if you remember back in 2009, our administration created the National Salt Reduction Initiative to solicit that help. And we worked with a network of 90 government and community partners across the country. We began reaching out to the nation's leading food companies to figure out ways to reduce salt intake and the health problems that come with it. We set out a pair of ambitious but achievable goals to reduce America's sodium intake by 20% by the year 2014. And in order to make that possible, to reduce the salt content of packaged and prepared foods by 25% over the same period. To get there by 2014, we set midpoint goals for companies to meet in 2012, and today I'm pleased to announce that 21 major food companies have reached those 2012 sodium reduction goals. This group, if you'll pardon the pun, is no small potatoes. It includes some of the biggest packaged food companies, restaurants, and food retailers in the country, if not the world. And together, they really do have a potential to make a huge difference. And representatives of 7 of these companies are with us here today. Let me give you a little bit of an example of the action these companies have taken. Kraft reduced the amount of sodium in Kraft Singles American Slices by 18%. Subway reduced sodium in 2 of its most popular sandwiches, the Subway Club and the Italian BMT, which just by accident happens to be my favorite, by 32% by serving and 27% respectively. Unilever reduced sodium in its Ragu Old World Style traditional tomato sauce by 20% per serving. Heinz took 15% of the sodium out of its U.S. ketchup line, and there are many other examples. And it's important to remember that these companies have a huge presence on our shelves and in our diets. The products they're making healthier are some of America's most beloved and iconic foods, so the incremental efforts they've voluntarily made to reduce salt are going to have a big impact on public health. How big? Well, consider the following facts. Salt is a major contributor to high blood pressure or hypertension, which in turn leads to heart disease and stroke. And together, these conditions kill more than 20,000 people each year in New York City alone. Just think about that. 20,000 people in New York City alone are killed by too much sodium, and more than 700,000 people across the country. So we're not talking about a small thing here, and we're not talking about something that everybody can joke about. By reducing the average sodium intake by only 1,200 milligrams a day, about a third of the American daily average, we could prevent tens of thousands of deaths every year and save up to something like $24 billion a year in healthcare costs nationwide. We all talk about healthcare costs bankrupting our country. Well, there's some ways you can do something about that, and this is certainly one of the ways. This incentive, we think, is taking us in the right direction. It really shows the difference we can make when the public and private sectors get together to tackle the biggest issues facing our country, and I do want to applaud the corporate partners here with us today for taking the lead and for setting an example that I'm certain other companies will follow. I also want to thank our health department for spearheading this work nationwide. It shows that, once again, when New York leads, the rest of the nation follows. So this has been done across the whole country, all because of the efforts of our city's Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And we are joined by the Health Commissioner, Tom Farley. Tom, you want to say a few words?
Thank you. If you wonder why we care so much about salt, let me just give you 3 facts. First, a third of the people who die in New York City die from cardiovascular disease. And second, roughly half of the people over the age of 50 have high blood pressure. And then third, more than 90% of people take in more salt that's recommended. So you can put those all together, you can see the connection. The problem is not the salt on the table, the problem is the salt on the label, because 80% of the salt we take in is from packaged and restaurant foods. So if we want to save the tens of thousands of lives the mayor just talked about, we can only succeed if food companies change the way that they prepare food. So this is a big achievement today, and I have a few people I want to thank. First, I want to thank our partners in the National Salt Reduction Initiative. This initiative is led by New York City, but it is truly national, with more than 90 health agencies and organizations who together have agreed upon targets and timelines for sodium reduction. And it's the only national initiative that's going on there in a national food market. Then I want to thank the companies who are standing here today and the others that have met their commitments. These people have shown that they care enough about health to make changes in the products that they make that already sell well. So today you're looking at the true leaders of the food industry, 21 companies. They represent an entire range. They include food manufacturers like Kraft and Heinz and Goya, and supermarket chains like Del Hayes America and Fresh Direct, and restaurant chains like Subway and Starbucks. They include a range from small family-owned companies to huge multinational corporations. And they show that food companies of all types can be part of the solution. Now, there are many food companies in this nation that are working on sodium reduction, but what's different here is that these companies participated in a public process, made a public commitment, and then met that commitment. And that's the kind of commitment we need to succeed. Now, I said this is a national initiative, and it has a national impact. So when the products that are involved are household names, households throughout America will have benefit from better health. So together we're learning that reducing salt in processed food is difficult, but it is not impossible. So today I want to invite other companies who have not been part of the initiative to date to join us, to follow these pioneers and be part of NSRI. We still have a long way to go, but we're making great progress. This is the start of something big.
Tom, thank you. Here representing Kraft Foods is Russ Moroz, Vice President of Research and Development and Quality. Russ?
Thank you, Mayor Bloomberg and Commissioner Farley, and thank you all for being here today. As Vice President of Research, Development and Quality for Kraft Foods, I have been deeply involved in the sodium reduction efforts at Kraft that we've done over the past several years. We joined the National Salt Reduction Initiative because we share the important goal of reducing sodium in the foods consumers love. Kraft is proud to have recently completed our own 3-year commitment to reduce sodium across our portfolio by an average of 10%. Through these efforts, we have eliminated the equivalent of 13 million pounds of salt, or nearly 1 billion teaspoons, from the North American diet annually. We recognize that working to reduce sodium is the right thing to do for our consumers and for our business. While we originally committed to meet the NSRI target sodium reduction in one category in 2012, we are pleased that we were also able to meet the reduction target in 50% of the categories in which Kraft competes. We focused our efforts on the areas where we could make the biggest improvements, including condiments, bacon, cold cuts, and cheeses. Sodium does play an important role in both food safety and taste. which is why we concentrate on making meaningful changes without ever sacrificing taste, quality, or food safety. Kraft will continue to meet our consumers' needs for products with improved nutrition and simpler ingredient lines. We are proud of our work and applaud Mayor Bloomberg, Health Commissioner Farley, and New York City for bringing greater focus to the importance of reducing sodium in the American diet. Thank you.
Russ, thank you. I should point out that we've made amazing increases in improvements in life expectancy, and I don't think there's any reason to think that that is slowing down. I was looking this morning at crime statistics. Murder is one of the things that influences life expectancy in our city. We are 6 weeks into the year, let's say 12% of the year, and our murder rate is 20% lower than it was at this time last year. I don't know that we can continue that, but the bottom line is whether it is in reducing our murder rate or things like getting people to eat healthier, these trends tend to build on themselves, and the reduction in salt here, you'll get a benefit every single year. And as more people reduce the amount of sodium they have and live longer, maybe others will listen to them. So we've got to make sure these trends, it's hard to start them, but then we've got to make sure that they continue, and I think they sort of, a lot of them get a sense of they just have a life of their own and continue to go, and that bodes well for New York City and for the country. Before we take questions, let me just summarize for our Spanish-speaking New Yorkers. El consumir demasiada sal puede causar problemas a la salud. Nuestra ciudad está al frente de un programa a nivel nacional para reducir la sal en comida preparada y empaquetada, la cual contiene un 80% de la sal que consumimos. Hoy 21 empresas se han unido para reducir la sal en las comidas que producen. With that, we'll be happy to